Everyone assumes the thing writers dread most is a scathing review. It isn't. A bad review is a compliment wearing a scowl. It means someone showed up, read the thing, and cared enough to swing. What actually flattens us is the opposite. The dead silence from the very people we listened to, cheered on, and helped through their own not-so-brilliant ideas. In this episode of Between the Lines, I take apart the difference between criticism and dismissal, resist the sweet temptation to declare everyone who ignored me a heartless villain, and land somewhere more useful. A way to keep your work, your generosity, and your dignity intact even when the room decides you were never in it. Rich, a little sarcastic, occasionally too honest? Bring your own grudge. We'll examine it together. Welcome to a new episode of English Plus with Danny. Here's a confession that will cost me nothing, because no one who needs to hear it is listening. I can survive a bad review. What I cannot survive, apparently with any grace at all, is a room that has quietly decided I was never in it. Let's start there, because I think we've been misdiagnosing the disease for years. Everybody says the one thing writers can't stand is criticism. It's practically a personality trait we're issued at sign-up, along with the caffeine dependency and the suspicious relationship with deadlines. The sensitive artist, thin-skinned, flinching at every unkind word. And I won't pretend there's nothing to it. Criticism does sting. Show me a writer who claims otherwise, and I'll show you a writer who has learned to say the professional thing in public while quietly bleeding in private, which is most of us, and which is fine. But here's what I've come to believe after enough years of doing this. Criticism is not the wound. Criticism is the noble scar. Because criticism, even the cruel, badly argued, clearly you didn't finish the piece kind, contains a hidden compliment so large it takes your breath away once you notice it. Someone read you. Someone gave your work minutes of their one wild and precious life. Someone cared enough to form an opinion, to sharpen it, to aim. A person who criticized you has, at minimum, admitted that you exist and that what you made was worth reacting to. There's a strange backhanded tenderness in that. To be attacked is to be seen. No, the thing we hate, the thing I hate, and I suspect I am not alone in the dark theater here, is dismissal. And not the accidental kind, the deliberate kind. The kind where a person who has time to notice 1,000 small things suddenly develops a very specific, very convenient blindness the moment your work enters the room. The kind that arrives not as a slammed door, but as no door at all, as if the wall had always been smooth. Silence. Dead silence. The most articulate silence in the world because it manages to say, you are not here and you never wrote a thing without a single word. Now let me be precise about the ache, because precision is the only revenge available to me, and I intend to take it. The wound isn't really about the work. If a stranger scrolls past me, I feel nothing. Strangers are supposed to scroll past. The wound is about the math. It is about the ledger you told yourself you would never keep, and then, God help you, kept anyway. Because here's what happened. You were the good one. You were the person who listened. When they wanted to talk about their idea, the app, the business, the screenplay that was basically written in their head, the side hustle that was going to change everything by next spring, well, to all of that, you listened. Not skimmed, listened. You asked follow-up questions. You remembered the names of the characters, the projected margins, the ex-friend who was supposedly stealing the concept. You showed up to the thing. You clicked the link. You said and meant, this is great. Tell me more. And you did this even when, well, let's be honest between us, since no one's around, you didn't especially care about the project itself. The app was one of 900 identical apps. The screenplay was generously a first draft of a log line. You knew this, and you helped anyway, and you were kind anyway because you'd made a quiet little bargain with yourself, a bargain you were almost proud of. And the bargain was this: I may not care about the project, but I care about the person. That was the whole deal. That was the thing that made you feel like a decent human instead of a scorekeeper. You loaded the caring onto the person and let the project ride along for free. And then it was your turn. Not a big turn. You didn't ask for a parade. You just made something. Put it out. Maybe mentioned it once, casually, the way you mention a haircut you're not sure about. And the person who could recite their own quarterly projections from memory looked at your work and produced nothing. Not a thumbs down, not a not really my thing, nothing at all. As if the file had failed to load. As if you had spoken in a frequency only dogs and future biographers can hear. That is the specific, exquisite pain. It's not that they judge the work harshly. It's that they refuse to concede the work even occurred. Now, at this point in the story, a very tempting theory presents itself, and I want to hold it up to the light for a moment because it is so warm and so comfortable, and I know you've held it too. The theory is this: they're jealous. They're heartless. They saw that you made something real, something that took courage and time and the willingness to be bad at it before you were good at it, and it sat wrong in their stomach because they had been talking about doing the thing for 6 years while you quietly went and did it. So they punished you with silence. The dismissal wasn't an oversight. It was a verdict delivered in the one language that leaves no fingerprints. And I have to tell you, honestly, sincerely, from the bottom of my slightly petty heart, it feels incredible to believe this. There is a whole cozy afternoon of satisfaction available to anyone willing to move into that theory and unpack their bags. You get to be the wrong genius. You get to be surrounded by small, envious people who couldn't bear your light. It's a wonderful story. It's practically a Renaissance painting. You in the middle, glowing, them in the corners, sulking. So let me be the person I'd want in the room and gently take the paintbrush out of my own hand. Because the villain theory has one fatal flaw, which is that it keeps you exactly where the dismissal put you, obsessed with them. It hands the whole matter to your worth right back to the very people who couldn't be bothered to look. If their jealousy is what makes your work meaningful, then their attention is still the currency you're trading in, and you've simply flipped the sign from "please notice me" to "how dare you not." Same casino, same house edge. You've just started betting on black instead of red. That's it. And it's usually not even true. Not entirely. Are some people threatened by someone close to them making something real? Sure, it happens. And it's a genuine, recognizable thing, and I'm not going to insult you by pretending everyone is a saint operating in good faith. But most of the silence, if I'm being as honest as this cozy little confessional demands, most of the silence isn't malice at all. It's something both more boring and more forgivable. Most people are simply the protagonists of their own movie. And in their movie, your work is set dressing. They're not sneering at your book. They genuinely didn't register that there was a book because they were busy and self-absorbed in the ordinary human way we're all self-absorbed, and their attention is a small flashlight they mostly point at themselves. The horror isn't that they looked and hated it. The horror is smaller and stranger. They never aimed the flashlight your way at all. Now there's an old line: a prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own house. I used to read that as a complaint. Now I read it as a weather report. It's not a moral failing of the town. It's physics. The people closest to you have a very specific handicap when it comes to your work. They know you took out the trash. They've seen you argue about the thermostat. They watched you eat cereal standing up over the sink at 11 at night looking like a man who has given up on the concept of bowls. And their brains, sensible brains, cannot easily hold two files at once. The you who does the dishes and the you who writes the thing that made a stranger cry are to them incompatible saves. They can't load both. So they default to the one they know, the domestic one, the ordinary one, and the writer version of you flickers and fails to render. Now, this is maddening. It is also, weirdly, not personal, even though it lands on the most personal spot you own. The stranger who reads you at midnight has a colossal advantage over your own brother. The stranger has never seen you eat cereal over the sink. The stranger meets only the work. And so the stranger can do the thing your own household finds neurologically impossible. Take the work seriously as its own object with no memory of the thermostat argument bleeding into the margins. Which means the silence from the people around you is, more often than not, terrible data and a terrible verdict. As data, it tells you almost nothing about the quality of your work because it was never a measurement of your work in the first place. It was a measurement of proximity. And proximity, it turns out, is one of the worst lenses on earth. So, here we are. You and I and the imaginary reader in the back who I've decided is nodding. What do we actually do? Because just don't care what people think is advice for statues, not for people who make things. And anyone who makes things and truly cared about nothing would make nothing worth caring about. The sensitivity that makes the dismissal hurt is the same sensitivity that makes the work good. You cannot anesthetize half of it. So the goal is not a thicker hide. The goal is a smarter one. First, separate the worth of the work from the attention it received in the room. These are two different animals wearing the same coat. A poem is not better because your cousin liked it, or worse because your cousin said nothing. Its worth was settled the moment it became true, the moment it said the thing exactly and made the invisible briefly visible. The applause is weather. The work is climate. Learn to feel the difference in your body so that when the silence comes, you can locate it correctly. On the surface, in the weather, not down in the bedrock where the actual thing lives. Second, and this one's harder, so lean in, honor the bargain you actually made. You said you helped those people because you cared about them, not the project. Fine. Then you have to mean it retroactively, all the way down, even now that they've disappointed you. Because the ugly little move that ruins us is this. The moment we feel dismissed, we go back and reclassify all our old generosity as an investment. We pretend, in hindsight, that we listened to their silly stories in order to buy future attention, and now the debtor has skipped town. But that's a lie we tell ourselves in the heat of the wound. You didn't lend them your attention. You gave it. And a gift that curdles into a grievance the second it isn't returned was never really a gift. It was a receipt you were hoping to cash. If the caring was real, it was already paid in full at the moment you gave it. Their silence can't repossess it. Don't let your own bitterness do the repossessing for them. Third, go find your actual readers. The ones who chose you instead of the ones assigned to you by biology and geography. This is the quiet, enormous freedom in all of this. You did not get to pick the people around you, but you absolutely get to pick, or rather be found by, the people your work is for. Somewhere out there is a stranger who needs exactly the sentence you're afraid is too weird to publish. That stranger is your reader. Your neighbor, statistically, is not. And it is not the neighbor's job to be. Stop auditioning for the wrong audience. The dismissal hurts partly because you're still standing in a room performing for people who bought tickets to a different show. Walk to the room with your name on the marquee. It's smaller. It's also blessedly awake. Fourth and last, keep the door open anyway. Now here's the trap on the other side of the wound. After enough silence, you're tempted to close up, to stop sharing, to preemptively dismiss everyone before they can dismiss you, to become, in the name of self-protection, the exact heartless and jealous figure you were so ready to accuse them of being. Don't. The correction for being unseen is not becoming unseeing. Keep listening to people's silly stories. Keep clicking the link. Keep caring about the person over the project. Not because they've earned it, they may never, but because that generosity is yours. It's part of who you decided to be, and you don't hand the eraser to someone who wasn't even paying attention. Let them keep their silence. You keep your open hand. Of the two of you, that's the better inheritance. I know, it would be so much more fun to end with a burn, to leave you with a perfect line about the jealous and the heartless, something quotable and a little cruel, the kind of thing you'd screenshot and send to the exactly one friend who does read your stuff. But I've been doing this long enough to know that bitterness is just dismissal in a better outfit. When they refuse to see us, they erase us. When we curdle into contempt for them, we erase them right back. And now there are simply two people in the story pretending the other one doesn't exist. And the only thing anyone has produced is silence squared. So here's the unfun, more durable ending. The people who greeted your work with dead silence probably weren't jealous, weren't heartless, weren't even really thinking about you at all, which is somehow both the smaller insult and the greater mercy because it means the verdict you've been carrying was never handed down. There was no verdict. There was a distracted person, a smooth wall, and a very sensitive writer standing in front of it, mistaking an empty room for a courtroom. Leave the room. The work comes with you. It always did. And out there, past the people who were assigned to you, someone is reading a sentence you were sure no one would ever care about, and they are, at this very moment, quietly and completely losing it. They're your reader. Go write the next thing for them. I know this is a personal log in my own Between the Lines project, and I said everything I wanted to say, and I could simply stop right here. But if you're interested, here are some things you can think about and discuss with anyone, or with me if you like. I want you to think of the last time you felt genuinely dismissed. Was it truly a verdict on your work, or a measurement of proximity of who happened to be standing near you? How does the answer change what you do next? And their just jealous theory is comforting, but keeps our worth in someone else's hands. What would it feel like to set that theory down entirely, even the parts that might be true? And my next question, have you ever caught yourself retroactively reclassifying an act of generosity as an investment that didn't pay off? What did that do to the memory of the gift? And next, who is your actual audience? The people your work is genuinely for, as opposed to the people simply assigned to you by family, geography, or habit. When did you last spend your energy on the right room? And finally, where's the line between protecting yourself from dismissal and slowly becoming the kind of person who dismisses others? How do you keep the open hand without letting it get stepped on forever? And finally, let me give you a little nudge. If this landed somewhere tender, do the small brave thing. Share it with the one person who does read your work and thank them out loud. Reciprocated attention is rare enough to deserve a receipt. And if you're a maker sitting in your own dead silent room right now, don't close the door in self-defense. Put the next thing out anyway. Then come tell me about it. Maybe leave a comment, maybe send a message, maybe reply to this episode. I read everything you send. Consider that a promise from one person who knows exactly what the silence sounds like to another. Trust me, your reader is out there. Let's go find each other. And with that, we come to the end of our Between the Lines episode for today. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you again next time.